Hi, everybody. Welcome back. We're doing another Instagram Live. I am Kevin Ivester from Ivester Contemporary. Today, I'm going to be talking to Kalee Appleton about her current exhibition in our project space called New Paths. This show has been up for about 3 weeks now, and it comes down April 3rd, which is just a week and 2 days. I'm going to invite Kalee. Let's see if we can get her in. I'm going to throw you around the gallery too while we wait. Hey, Kalee.
Hey, I
How are
did it.
you?
I'm good. How are you?
You made it in.
Yeah,
I'm just doing a quick pan of all this work.
awesome.
Kalee, could you just introduce yourself while we look around?
Yeah, of course. My name's Kalee Appleton. I'm a artist and educator living in Fort Worth. Um, let's see, I teach photography at TCU in Fort Worth and live and work here. Um, and this is some of my newest work. I don't think any of it has been exhibited before, so it's its debut.
Yeah, it's awesome. Um, so the exhibition is called New Paths. Uh, can you also just briefly, I mean, I don't know if there's a brief way to say it because they're so complicated, but what are these made out of?
Well, yeah, so basically what you're looking at are wooden frames,
Hmm.
but they just happen to not be rectangles or squares. And then, normally within a frame, you'd have a photo or a painting or something like that. So these are photographic inkjet prints inside. Um, and so they're really just framed photographs, but they just happen to be in irregular shapes.
Way,
Uh,
way more complex. Yeah,
right.
and you say that they're photographs, but that's only half of it, right?
Right. Yeah. I mean, they're definitely digitally manipulated, and that was kind of a main goal was to create imagery that was clearly false or falsified and looked like it's been manipulated
Hmm.
and not like a straight photograph, and I think in needing it to be digital, it kind of fits the like form and function, and that these are very digital shapes that like clearly they reference some sort of like post production or like Photoshop scribble or something. Even like a markup, like on our phones right now, you can like mark up
Hmm.
your finger. Just they're always kind of these like um, really gestural little drawings that end up showing up on a device. And so
Right.
by using those shapes, it only made sense to me to insert images that also reference kind of this digital nature of the process and the or I guess
Right.
of
Yeah,
shape.
so I always say to people, like if they were going to just open up Photoshop quickly and open the brush tool and do a really quick, just maybe test on how that brush tool even works, you might do something like this.
Absolutely. Yeah, that is kind of like the very like rudimentary, almost like the digital version of testing a pen. You get a 10, does it
Yeah,
work? Scribble.
little scribble.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
that
Um,
one especially. Like I've done that with a pen a million times.
so like in kind of in the scene, they're also kind of like drawings, which I really like the idea that these are drawing and sculpturally based, and then also photo based.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean it's a mixture of photo, sculpture, drawing, all these things combined. Um, And you talk about the imagery being digitally manipulated. What is sort of first off, what is the base image? How do you get that base image?
Um, let's see. Well, it's usually like of nature, and so originally, my whole idea originally was like, I'm going to make these cool frames, the landscape in there, because I've been working with landscape, and I really like this dichotomy that's created with like landscape and digital because they seem so opposite.
Hmm.
Didn't work. And it took a really long time to decide like what is going to work in these frames. So the frames came first for sure. Um, and then I started working with imagery, just like creating these little mock-ups that I even sent you a few mock-ups. That's just my process. And trying to see like what makes sense. And so once shutdown started, it really gave me a lot of time to sit and think about what needs to go in these. And I started playing like with this like extreme repetition of just like this like super tiny details just repeated over and over. And it reminded me of like a video game that you'd see like from the 80s or 90s, kind of these
Like bit.
like the repetition of texture. And it felt very digital to me. It also reminded me a lot of I used to be a helicopter photographer, like totally random, and it reminded me also of kind of aerial shots, because video games are kind of like aerial views. And it
Yeah.
was like kind of these like you would see a lot of repetition when you're in the sky, and so it started reminding me of kind of this overall kind of omniscient view of just everything. And so I started using it's this tool in Photoshop. It's just, you know, Photoshop is like full of a billion different things you can do to a photo. And this one just happens to be like a smart algorithm that fills, well, just like guesses what you want. And so it kind of guesses like, I'm just going to repeat this section of pixels because it looks like it's right next to this other section. So I'm just going to repeat it, and it just repeats. And I do have certain control over it where I can determine what it repeats.
Mm-hmm.
And that became kind of the avenue of creating a little bit of digitalness, and then also a little bit of what would the word be? Kind of like trial and error in some ways, where I relinquish a little bit of power, and then I see if I like it. So it's kind of
Yeah, and the imagery, because it's all repeated and flipped and mirrored, it does fit in these really strange frames. I would imagine much better than like a regular landscape.
oh yeah, like when you put a normal landscape in there, you're like, man, it just didn't
Crowded.
go. But I love too how with these like from far away, I enjoy them as like this shape, and then they just like pull you in, you get in, and you just like you can just like put it up next to your face, and see. I love the little details that eventually became extremely important to this work, like the just tiniest little sharp, just mosaic of detail.
Yeah, when it comes to detail, this one might be my favorite because it's there's got a lot of contrast here. It's very dark imagery, but as you get close, you start to really see this is a tiny photograph of a
Of water,
waterfall.
and I
With
love.
Yeah, this one is so intense. I mean, there's so much detail, there's so much saturation in the foliage around it. And this one I feel like is a good example of how that tool in Photoshop, it's content awareness, right?
Yes, content awareness fill. And
Bill.
then I will occasionally go in and kind of like tweak a few sections if I don't like it, or like those there were a few waterfalls that I was like, oh, this needs a few more waterfalls, so I would throw in a few more kind of strategically placed elements. But for the most part, it is kind of like being created by this algorithm.
More waterfalls.
All I love waterfalls. If you know, if I wasn't so self-conscious, I might have just made every single image just have a different waterfall.
Oh, waterfalls. Oh, that's cool. Did you take this photograph? The
I
waterfall?
Yeah, actually, all of the photos in here, all of my source imagery, I have a ton of like files that I've had for, digital photography was a thing, and so I really have pulled from my collection and just searched for different kind of um, imagery. And so, there's been all sorts of variations of of images used in all of these.
Yeah. Um, and when did you start sort of working with, I mean, you've got a photo background, but when did you start mixing mediums the way that you are for this show?
Well, I feel like since graduate school, which I started grad school in 2012. But then even if I look back and I really concentrate, I can recognize even in undergrad when I was like super young, really young artist, I always loved experimentation. So for me, this feels very experimental,
Yeah.
something that I've always tried to do because I just get a lot of enjoyment out of it. But in terms of like making these frames and stuff, the I started making photographs that were irregular shapes in that I just cut them out and put them on a wall. And I just didn't have a frame.
Mm-hmm.
And then I learned about a CNC router and I learned about what it was. And I had a friend of mine who was really good at using it, and he taught me how to use it. And I made a previous series with some irregular shaped frames, but these are more complex. And I think I mean, that's a natural progression, and that those were very relatively simple shapes, even though they weren't squares. And then these have, more elements to them, like the little inserts. Um,
On the
that
waterfall one?
Yeah, they just came with like my continued use of the process and like just gradually learning how I could make these frames a little bit more complex and then them not fall apart.
Yeah, especially this one here with this like hanging arm coming off the top of it. It just
Yeah,
feels like really, for lack of a better word, like daring that you would have this hanging out there, and I'd be worried about it breaking. That arm has got to be, I don't know, 5 or 10 pounds of wood
yeah,
that could very well break, but it didn't. It worked.
yeah. I have a backing that fits perfectly in there, and that backing really creates a good skeleton for them.
Hmm. Yeah, and you mentioned the work feeling experimental. I would totally say it's experimental, and I look at a lot of artwork, and I've never really seen anything like this. And to have the mixture of experimentation, innovation, and like I think most importantly, honestly, is just the beauty of these that they really work. Um, it's that's a difficult balance to strike.
Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate that sentiment. That makes me feel good. I know
Yeah.
that don't like the word beauty, but for me, part of why I moved to flowers was the need to have some sort of like positivity, like just given our current climate, like I needed to just look at something that was nice to look at, and that was the first thing I kind of went to were flowers.
Yeah. I mean, I'm also really interested in like pushing ideas and connecting people that walk into the gallery with new types of artwork. But like, especially right now, I need beauty. I need positivity. Uh,
Right.
yeah.
Uplift
Uh,
it.
so with content awareness, just the last question. I do want to keep it short. Instagram, you know, it's tough to look at the screen for that long, but I'm so interested in your use of the content awareness tool. And would you call it artificial intelligence, what it's doing, like low level?
mm, I mean, i guess if I guess if you define AI like um I don't think it technically is, because I still have control over it, and it's really just following like it's just job is to like look at pixels and duplicate them. Uh,
Yeah, lit.
but in terms of like it's definitely analyzes an image and then based on the coding of it, replicates it and makes decisions based off of kind of these rules that were written into it. I think that's how that works. Um, so there is it feels like a collaboration a lot of times, and a lot of times I think about it's more of a collaboration with the person that wrote, or the people that wrote that kind of like code that developed um, the the algorithm.
Yeah.
Uh, it used to be awful, and it's definitely progressed where it's gotten better at creating like seamless images. And even still, I have to work with it to create an image that I like. Like, it's not just like, oh, I did it and it works. Like it is a lot of kind of like, okay, well, I'm gonna do it this slightly different, and let's see what outcome I get from selecting this particular area. And then there's also, oh, sorry.
It's pretty convincing because I have a hard time finding like where is the original photograph.
Yeah.
Throughout the whole thing, um, I don't see any real seams. It all looks.
No, it is. That's the thing that I love about it too. It is seamless. Like, I could go in and I could manually just clone all these over and over again. But I love the little areas where it's like, it's not a glitch, but it's like a repetition of the same flower. And you just start noticing that, like, kind of that repetition that um, is how it operates. And that's something that I was like really into, because I could I could do this manually, but at the same time, I don't think I could do it in such a like mechanical way. Like, mine would be more, um, I think, more organic and less digital.
Mhm. I also appreciate too, from piece to piece, you have varying levels of repetition and pattern. Some of these, it feels like especially with the waterfall, that's a photo from far away, and it completely changes how that piece feels in comparison to like some of these smaller strokes, which like the repetition is so tight.
Yeah, yeah,
That's it's a completely different feel.
yeah, for sure. And sometimes that is that trial and error where I'm just like, oh, wow, it like, you think you understand a tool, and then all of a sudden it did something crazy, or it did something like that totally unexpected, which is kind of fun to recognize in the process that it's not always going to, like, I don't, I don't think I could replicate exactly that file if I were to use that same file again. I think I would get a different result depending on some decisions.
It's so strange how that
I know.
happens. I mean, really, you have to consider like where does your authorship start? Where does the computer's authorship start and end? I like your thoughts on it being a collaboration. It's interesting to think about.
I mean, I guess that's like, I think there was a lot of talk about Photoshop, and people were scared to, like, photographers were scared, like, oh, I took this in camera, like, this isn't Photoshopped, as if like somehow knowing Photoshop is a bad thing.
Hmm. I
Um,
didn't use that other tool. It's just rudimentary.
but in actuality, it's like, if you have the skills and you know Photoshop that well, that's pretty good skill. That Why is that lesser than knowing how to do it in a camera? You know?
Right.
So it's just another tool that all artists have tools, and it just happens to be a software program.
Yeah. Well, I'm really excited about having your work here. People love it. I mean, and people definitely connect with it even more when they see it in person because it doesn't matter how many photographs I take of it or videos or, little details of the close up. It's just all of a sudden you understand how three-dimensional this work feels when you're in the space. And you'll be here Saturday night, right?
I will. Yeah, I can't wait to see it in person.
Yeah, so March 27th, we're having a reception. We only allow 6 people in the space at a time, but Kalee will be here down from Fort Worth. And the show is on view until April 3rd. So we've got a week left.
And there's
So,
another show also to see. So, two shows.
yeah, Sydney Yeagers, we'll give her a little pan around. So, and these two shows, and they look great together. It's like
Yeah,
this.
I love the conversation between the two shows.
Yeah, it's really fun. It's the space feels super positive and exciting. So I hope that everyone listening who hasn't seen the show can come out and see it. Check out Kaylee's work. Like she said, it's the first time she's exhibited it. I've never seen any work like this before, and we'll see you Saturday night.
Sounds good.
Cool. Thanks, Kaylee.
Bye. Thanks.
Bye.